I was saying just a moment ago, I'm so glad that John did the audio book as well as, the written book. He's such an excellent writer. It is like kind of like a fireside chat, listening to the audio book. But tonight we get to have him live, so that is even better, right? And I met John about a year ago, I guess it was, on one of the Facebook groups that we both belong to about reincarnation, and just had an instant affinity. And he actually came down from Rhode Island, where he lives, for the Reincarnation Symposium, and now we get to have him live tonight for the book club. So John is actually a practicing hypnotherapist, covers a lot of different, more subjects in hypnotherapy than I do. I'm really focused on regression therapy, but John does that regression therapy also. And some of the stories that he tells about it, that experiences that happened in his training, I can really relate to those, John. And then his own memories that, oh my goodness, so exciting. Got someone coming in, and our door locks at 7, so Judy's taking care of that. And before getting into hypnotherapy, or I guess there was an overlap at some point in time, he was in the advertising business. So I loved the interview that you shared with, I forget who it was, not too long ago, about the slogan that you created for Rhode Island. Yeah. Having trained in marketing also with my interior design background, I can really connect with that story, because once you get a really good hook, that is so meaningful. The same is true in a book.
Okay. $1,000 a piece.
When you have a good hook in a book, that draws you into the story. The other thing I love about John's writing in this book is very few authors, very few people that I know of, remember multiple past lives, and also share the stories about it and connect the dots between those past lives and this one. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote Unstuck in Time. And so we were kind of running along parallel, because your book came out about the same time mine did. And so to have someone else who was going through that process was really exciting for me. So I want to, I'm going to pin you, John, so we can see you better. Okay. And what I'd love to start out with is tell us, first of all, what was the turning point, the thing that got you interested in past lives?
Oh my. First, let me thank you, Carol, not only for having my book to be talked about today, but for creating this incredible space, this space of people gathered together. I believe that there are a lot of us on a spiritual path think there are no coincidences, that whatever is in a way meant to be if you can figure out the meaning. And so I will say to those, all of you, good to see you again. And if you were here last month, I mean, not in this incarnation, but if you weren't here last month, I mean it anyway. So what got me into, I call myself the reluctant reincarnationist. I was never terribly interested in it, frankly. I was interested in things like Zen. I was interested in other types of consciousness raising. But I had an experience, actually, I was training. I was doing this training, which was very intense. You weren't eating, you weren't sleeping, and there was a lot of psychological and philosophical concepts thrown at you. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was shot in the back of my head, and I experienced myself flying, not through the building I was in, but through a building. And the reason I mentioned that, and I hadn't really thought about that in a long time, but last month, you had James Maddox, who comes from the point of view of science, of investigation, Ian Stevenson's work, where they look at spontaneous reincarnation experiences. Now, Brian Weiss and company, me, Carol, we create it through hypnosis. But I actually had the spontaneous thing. And then 3 or 4 days later, a friend of mine, it turned out his wife was doing past life regression, Patty Tohill, who's in North Carolina now, I believe. And so I went to her and I filled in the first part of that. And I found myself, I introduced myself. You can either look at a life experience from the outside, describing what's happening, or from the inside. So from the inside, I heard myself introducing myself, and I started to say Corporal Riley. My mouth was going Corporal. He was only a private, but he had pretensions. He had a silk shirt like the officers. And, so I'm having this amazing experience. And one of the things about the question that has to be asked, how do you know it's real? And I'm going to say my point of view is I really don't. I believe it was real. I believe it wasn't just my imagination. But this gave credence. I walked into a room and there was something strange about it. And I realized the room was lit by candles. In my whole life, I've never been in a large ballroom lit by candles. So I had that experience, and that's how I got involved in it. And for many, many years, as a general practitioner, I'm Bayside. I've been doing this full-time hypnotism for 24 years, and working with smoking, stress, relationship issues, career issues, golf, school improvements. And but over those years, people would ask me, do you do past life regression? And I would, if they asked. I was dependent on medical referrals. So I didn't want the doctors in my community. My office is in a medical building. I didn't want them to think I was as weird as I am. So I kept that quiet and did it all like that. But I am, in this incarnation, I'm talking to you from an elderly male body, maybe with a young spirit inside, but I don't care that much anymore about getting business from doctors. So I wrote and published my book, my Autobiographies, because during those years, I was privately, after that first experience as Private Riley, exploring my own, past lives. People including Carol, and look, Carol I met after I wrote the book, but so her story, the things I experienced with her aren't in there. But for my own evolution. So that basically is my story. And if we talk today about my story only, I think it'll be a waste of your time. I'm going to suggest we talk about our story, all of our stories. That, a thing about me is I am not particularly qualified. I don't have a PhD. I have a master's degree in Irish literature, which can tell you that maybe what I say should be taken as if it were Blarney, maybe. But I'm just a person like you, and a soul like you. And I happen to be motivated to write this book. So what I want to talk about is our ideas, the nature of the soul. What is a soul? Its relationship to that which creates this, the deity, humanity's destiny. I have a point of view. I'll talk about what it means to be human, and why anyone should engage in past life work. My book, and also Carol's, I believe, is the start of a new genre.
Yes.
It's not fiction, it's not nonfiction, it's not memoir. It's a multidimensional experience. So that's my opening gambit there, Carol.
Fantastic. And I one of the things I love about your book and you as a person, as I've gotten to know you, is the humbleness. That you consider yourself an ordinary person, yet you're having these experiences. And as you read the story, you see that these are, so I do another kind of work, which is more quantum consciousness oriented. And I have a feeling that you do that, whether you label it or not. But you go into these places where you understand the world, this life we're living, these past lives, but at a quantum level. And I think that's what you're alluding to. But something you said just a moment ago about what is soul, I think that's a great place to start, because there are so many ideas about what that is. So out of your experiences, what does soul mean to you?
Well, I think your group here is a very special place. And I heard James Madlock last month say that he was talking about soul as consciousness. And that really resonates with me. The way I look at creation is that in the beginning, there is deity, and it was alone. And it was bored, frankly. And it created all this stuff. You know, there's one point of view about God, the old deist thing, 18th century, that God stands outside of creation and creation occurs, and then there's God up there somewhere. The thing I find more, or I resonate with, this notion that everything is deity. I call it that which creates this, that and we are all part of it. I believe to be alive is fundamentally different from being inanimate. I think God is inside of everything. God is in every atom, every quantum, every electron, every things we don't even know about. And God consciousness resides within. So I think God's dilemma is, how do I experience myself? You know, and I think God, just for the freaking joy of it, created consciousness, living things outside of it. That though I may still regard myself as part of deity, I'm separate from it. And I believe all living things are conscious in that way, plants, animals, humans. And I believe you can call that soul, for lack of a better word. You know, so focusing on all the connotations of religions that we're raised in, but, you know, for lack of a better word, consciousness, soul, God looking at itself. And then I also think soul is in the process of evolution, individually and as a collective, that we are all moving towards something. And I believe that's something. I put a name to it 30 years ago. I got the idea of calling it Homo Deus instead of Homo sapien. They were in the process of moving towards something better. Maybe not better, but more a co-creator with deity, more conscious.
Part of the evolutionary process.
So that's my sense of soul. Yeah, an extension.
Yeah. And I like what you said about consciousness evolving. I've been doing this for now 33 years. I've always been kind of a philosophical person, but 33 years ago, when I had an awakening and opening up to all of this, it was a different world than it is now. And I hear what you're saying, that there's something happening that is so expansive about where we are in consciousness that I don't think we even have words yet to fully describe it, but I sense we're feeling it. You know, 33 years ago, when I was talking about stuff like this, people would hold a cross up to me and tell me I was of the devil. Really, literally, I was in the South. And I mean, I'm still in the South, but in Florida in the South. And that was my reaction that I got across the board. It was funny because one of the past lives I was remembering in the get-go was someone who was in the Inquisition and so persecuted, and I had to help him get over that fear of being persecuted so that I could speak my truth. And I know you've had some lives like that also, but as a male, because not a whole lot of males that I know who remember past lives have such vivid memories of being a female. And when I first met you, that was one of the stories that touched me so deeply, is how remembering being a female, particularly it was the one who was the mother, Uma. I think think her
Yeah,
name.
Egypt, or that part of the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
Una, or actually Unan, I think was. I misspelled her name in the book, but yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. How Carol Bowman, my teacher, says that women are okay with remembering that they're males, but most males are not okay with remembering they're females. So when you were sharing that story with me when we first met, I thought, oh, this is so exciting to hear. And
another practitioner, David Quigley, was one of my trainers in Santa Rosa, California, and he was talking about how you can access skills through past life work. People go to past lives because of curiosity. I hate when a client comes like they're just curious if it exists or not. I like is people that go for either to solve a problem, like they have a problem they can't fix, or they just want to, become better as a person. But Quigley said you could go back and pull out an attribute or a skill. And I chose the skill of leadership. As a hypnotist, you're a leader. And I thought I would enhance my leadership skills. And I found myself this middle-aged woman in Egypt, Alexandria. That's the name that came to my mind. But, I want to put a pin in that for a second and point out that unlike Ian Stevenson's work, all of us who are grown-ups have seen stuff. I've seen the movie Cleopatra, Spartacus. I've got a database, so I really can't tell. But nonetheless, this was clear. I experienced her, and she was on a boat. She was going to see her sons, and her sons, she had 3 of them, were builders. They built big buildings, government buildings, palaces. They were the Builder Brothers, and she was their mentor. So the idea of leadership with the feminine nurturing model was what I got out of it. And I was not expecting that at all. Not at all. I also had the experience with her that being a mother, in my experience of this, is fundamentally different from being a father. In this life, I have 3 children. I love my children. I'm there for them. I do all the stuff that a father is supposed to, happily. But the mother thing is different. These 3 boys, they were big men, had been part of my body. They were mine. They were me out in the world. And in Una's case, one of them, the youngest one, died, her favorite. And she left that life with this incredible feeling of loss. But that was, that was, I wasn't expecting that particular afternoon, to know what it's like more to be a female. I just never knew, and I suspect most men don't. How would we?
And wouldn't it be a different world if men did remember their lives as females, and maybe they would treat females differently if they did? It's knowing the energy, the feminine energy, and then being able to embody it. Because I'm very Taoist. I believe that we each have some of both energies, and whether you're born as a female and focus on that, there's still a masculine side of you. So when we as females can, and I have several memories of being male, and sometimes I feel like that comes off stronger than my feminine energy and in this lifetime. So, but I love that you shared that. And I love that I forgot momentarily that in that lifetime, you being focused on talents. So often when we have people come to do a regression, it's because of a challenge that has come into our life. But this is the other side of regression therapy that I really love. I call it the occupational therapy aspect of regressing, to remember those gifts and talents that we've worked on in many lifetimes, and that we can tap into the energy of that, the memories of that in this lifetime. So you did that very, very well there. And then you had another lifetime as a soldier. So you obviously brought that energy into this lifetime. What of the the 14 lives that you shared, which one for you was the most challenging?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Carol, to be incarnated is to be fucking, to be incarnated is to be challenged.
Oh,
I belong to a Facebook group, as you do, and this guy posted this thing a few weeks ago. He said, I don't care what anyone says, I ain't coming back. It can be tough here. It can be tough here. I did another thing. I did this thing in Colorado with Zelita Grant, and I did a past life thing with her. So I spent, it's 3 or 4 days, 3 days immersed in this. And on the way back on the plane in the airport, I was so struck by this struggle of what it is to be incarnated. As spirit, I think it's effortless. Think it, have it. When you're incarnated, everything is gravity. The gravity wants to pull your arms down, and anything you want done, there are steps to go through, and we're also stuck in the pain pleasure. It's tough being incarnated. So I think all of my lives were in their own way, and I think every life, every human life, nobody gets out of this without drama and trauma. Nobody. I don't care. You can be the richest person in the world, or you can, I know some lives must be more challenging. I didn't have any life like as a Holocaust victim. I guess maybe my lives were fairly, not that horrible, if that answers the question. So none of them really stick out as being particularly, but many of them, they all had their challenges.
the other lifetime that you shared, that also brought up your talents. And I think in the book, you talk about how this was probably one of your favorite ones. And one of my favorites in the stories too, was the shaman.
Yeah, he is my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
You're
beaming just even thinking about him.
I think lives, you either bring back, he was beautiful. I think you either bring back talents, attributes, or issues to be resolved. And I can't think of any issue to be resolved I got from that life. He was, he had a questioning mind. He had a position of prominence in the village. He was the magic guy, but he inquired, he investigated, he was looking. And I got into this life with an inquiring mind to ask questions. I can't help it. And I wouldn't change it for the world. What is the nature of reality? What is it to be human? To live inside the square. And he did that. He died by trying to get power from a rhinoceros. He was doing an experiment, not a good idea, by the way, generally, to try to stare down a rhinoceros and get the power. But he knew that the horns could be used for male potency. So there I am with my rattles and stuff. And the thing about him in that life, the lesson there is he didn't talk to anybody about what he was planning to do. If he had said to a friend or a colleague, I'm going to go stare down a rhinoceros that's been hanging around the village and get their power, or they would have told him, don't do that. That's not a good idea. But he talked to his tree, his favorite tree, who was his mentor, and the tree kind of agreed with him. You can make an imaginary symbol say anything you wanted to, and he got the tree to say, good idea, good idea. And next thing I know, I'm dead.
So maybe that was the lesson there, that he didn't talk with another human being.
Yes.
Have you had that issue in this lifetime?
But that's a minor issue to work with compared to some of the other things I've had to deal with.
Yes, exactly. I don't want to hog all the questions. Do you guys have any questions that hold on one second. Okay, Judy has a question.
Hey, Judy.
Hi again. How long did it take you to realize how many different lives you had?
I'm still in the process of doing that. This to me is an ongoing investigation. If you become, I call myself a past life explorer.
Okay.
If you become a past life explorer, you kind of do it, I think, when it feels right. When you, For example, I've been in business for 24 years in this business, and people like me are very dependent on reviews, including for my book. If anybody goes to Amazon.com and wants to say some nice things, I wouldn't say no. But I got this horrible review on Yelp, 1 star from somebody I never worked with. But I had misscheduled, and she used that as to discredit me as a person. And I went nuts. I went over and above the kind of nuts I should have gone. And I made the mistake of asking her to reconsider, and she doubled down and said worse things on Yelp. And so I called a practitioner. This was long before I met Carol, and I found myself as a 15th century monk, and I'm a teacher, and I've got these students, and I got 7 or 8 students. At the time I was also teaching, but I was teaching a certification class for hypnotists. So I've got these 7 or 8 students. I live in the turret in the monastery. I'm so happy and so self-satisfied. I have my books, I have my honor, my position, my spirituality. God and I are like best buddies. And the nephew, in quotes, of the archbishop comes to my class. And back in those days, if the archbishop had a nephew, it really wasn't his nephew. And I should have known that. I don't know whether I did or didn't, but I went nuts because he was disrespectful. And I couldn't, because what happened was my pride was hurt by this nephew, who was a higher social status than me by far. And I made the mistake of confiding to the abbot that this kid doesn't belong in my class. The abbot was in cahoots with the archbishop. I could call on the carpet. And I lose my nice turret and my nice job, and I get put into the kitchen. And there I am. I'm beside myself. The archbishop says to me, "Who do you think you are? You're nothing. You're nothing." And so there I am. I had a moment or two of cutting potatoes, and then I take a rope out to a nearby tree and hang myself. And suicide is never a good idea. Karmically, I don't think it's ever a good idea. And but as a result of that, I got freed from my obsession about this lady. I was reacting to her as if she was the archbishop's nephew, tearing apart my standing in my own mind. My pride got wounded, and that's a long. I in my book, if you read it carefully, I say every life has a primary mission, and it's hard to tell your mission when you're in the middle of a life, right? Yeah. And I said maybe the reader can figure out my mission when I can. But I've come to conclude is that a lot of my lives, it has to do with the idea of being worthy. You've heard people say they don't feel good enough, and connecting with that is pretension. So my life has been not feeling good enough and pretending. And Private Riley was that, he couldn't get the world to see him the way he wanted to be seen. And so I think one thing, you can get as you do many lives is you can see your themes. And that's just me. I work on this life. The one exception was the shaman. And I brought that beautiful man's soul, I think, partially here. But anyway, it's enough for me for a while.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy.
And Suzanne has a question. Oh, and before Suzanne asked her question, Peter on chat said he really thought the shaman was a self-realized person. And yes. I would definitely agree with that.
Yes, he was a happy dude.
Yeah,
he really was, and a positive force in his village, and he loved his life until he, got killed by the rhino.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but you are linked to all of these lives. Are they linked to one another in some other way other than through you?
That's a good question.
Well, the way I look at it, I call it my autobiographies. And again, I say that that's a genre. that anybody in this meeting today could create your own autobiography.
Right, so, but do you think that there's some
Anyone could,
link
whether you
between
choose to
the
publish it or just do it for you.
and the brother and, or between?
Oh, yeah, yeah, well, it's all the story of my soul,
Right.
of the soul that resides within this body,
Mhm.
that has chosen this incarnation. It's the soul story.
Yes.
John Koenig, my sense I talk about in the book is that life, I call it spiritual kindergarten that we're in, but it's also like a play where we wear costumes. And, the costumes include our gender, our social status, our race. Earlier, Carol said it'd be nice if more men would be aware of, would treat women differently if they'd had the experience of being a woman. Well, if you were white and you had the experience of being black, as I did, as a slave child in Georgia and grown up, or somebody of different political points of view, different religions, different social status, the world would be a very different place. I think one of the things you get out of this work is empathy for people, to know that everybody is human and suffering and striving, and that nobody is fundamentally better than anybody else. We're all in this together, I think. And that's a beautiful way to live, I think. I asked the question automatically, was there any research about the benefit of having this philosophy in one's life? And yeah, for sure, culturally, it's not. You can't look at cultures that believe in this necessarily and say they're better. But I would love to see research on how a person's belief structure affects the quality of their life. If you believe, I was raised in a tradition that told me I was going to hell. That surely had an impact on me.
All right, can I try and
Yeah,
make this? So do you think that if any one of these other incarnations had such awareness of past lives, they would also recall the same past life? Like, would the Colonel or whatever, if he had been self-aware or had the opportunity, could he have also called back to him the shaman or the other?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think from any portal, if your soul is your soul.
Right.
I have the thought that probably souls are immortal.
So it would be fascinating, but apparently.
And that includes all of us. I'm looking at the four here on the screen. I think we're all just souls having this physical experience. Isn't this wild? And we get to hang out together
so
and talk about this stuff.
let me ask a follow-up question to Suzanne's. Did any of your past lives become aware of you?
Yeah.
No.
Not even the
Nothing,
shaman?
no, definitely no. But how about you, Carol? Because you've actually had, and you actually went and checked out. You went back to the village, right?
Right.
In
Yeah.
China.
And I asked that, I realized that maybe that's
So
where you're trying
Yeah,
to go.
sometimes.
Yeah.
If they had any awareness of one another or of you or.
Right. The very first past life I remembered, her name was Lily, and she happened to have been a meditator. And when I was meditating one time, all of a sudden I realized, oh, I'm being watched, just like when I'm doing a regression, I'm watching, the other life. And so that was my first experience of, wait a minute, she's remembering me. And that changed the dynamics of our relationship. This is what I'm talking about, the quantum experience. So maybe we need to do that with one of your or several of your past lives, John.
So she was remember her future.
Yeah, well,
That sounds like fun.
in quantum consciousness,
There's no
it's all
time.
happening simultaneously. So even though in ordinary consciousness, we call it past, present, and future. So yes, so she was back, in the timeline, she would have been 42 BC.
Wow.
So yes, she would be remembering me as a future self. And that's what got me thinking, wait a minute, when we refer to a higher self, what are we really referring to? So,
Because that's kind of what I was trying to get at, if there interaction between them.
yeah, I think,
Obviously, it's the same soul, but yeah, but was there awareness? I
Yeah.
guess?
so, I'm as I've delved into this more fully, what I've learned is that when we first begin remembering, we think of when you're going to elementary school, you're learning how to read and write and make sentences, words, and then sentences. And the same thing is true when we're beginning to remember past lives. Well, I mean, that goes to the question of why don't people even remember? They're in elementary school such that, okay, it's not for their highest good even to remember yet. So they need a little bit more, advancement, and then they'll start remembering. And then when you start remembering, now it's like, what do you do with this? Well, I'm like an investigator. I want to go deep into it. And so I did a lot of self-hypnosis. I did several regressions. The memories were coming spontaneously. And I think you had some memories that were spontaneous also, if I remember correctly. And so the more information and connection you develop with these lives, now the relationship develops. Just like with, people who are physical. The more you know that person, the more you understand that person, it's almost like you can finish each other's sentences, or you'll think about somebody and they'll call you.
Hmm.
That's going on in these other realms too. And I think someone had a question or comment.
I just threw that in. I it's a very commonly accepted thing in the spiritual community that time is an illusion, but it's really hard to wrap my head around that.
Until you have the experience.
Until you have the experience, it seems linear.
Yeah.
There was a yesterday, and there's going to be a tomorrow, maybe there's right now, but truly, it's always right now in the mind of God. And as consciousness, bits and tiny bits of God, we live in the now, experiencing the illusion of time, I think.
Yeah.
So if you have any future lives?
Oh, so Suzanne says, have you had any future lives? I don't remember you talking about that.
But if time is an illusion, it doesn't really matter. And only one. And this wasn't my wife's experience. My wife, I did a regression hypnosis with her, and she finds us together again, and we are probably Korean, and we're fishermen. We work in the fishery, and we're like best buddies. We're not, male female, and we spend a lot of our time arguing about, is a fish a large fish or a medium fish? Where do you put it? We're fish people. And apparently, according to her, in her experience, we're really happy at it. We're like best buddies. So whether that's or that's another thing, by the way. I meet a lot of people, and they've been told by somebody, by a psychic, or maybe just by you are definitely a Roman gladiator, and they go around believing they're a Roman gladiator. I don't find much benefit in that. To experience myself as a Roman gladiator, a lot of benefit in that.
Yeah.
But just to have this thought that somebody else has given me. So whether Marie and I will meet each other and sort fish in our next life or not, I don't know. She's convinced we're going to, and that she'll be right about the classification of the fish.
That reminds me,
Jean has a question for you.
Hi,
Hey,
John.
Jane.
I just wonder if you yourself or any of your clients has remembered themselves, herself, himself as an animal.
That's interesting. I have, and a lot of people that write about this stuff say it doesn't happen, and all I know is my own experience. I literally spent an hour as a beetle,
Only an hour?
and it wasn't John, Paul, George, or Ringo. I was a little bug. Yeah, I'm a little bug, and it was fascinating. I think I paid $100 for the experience. I'm watching. One thing I like about this work is when things surprise you, when something looks funny. And there was this huge dome, and I realized it was a drop of water. But from my bug perspective, I saw that the tensile strength held the dome up. And then once I realized that, I was like, what am I looking at? And then oh my God, that's a drop of water with, grass growing out of it. That was worth $100. That was a good experience. It was.
Okay, thank you. David has some questions.
Oh, I do have a couple of questions. You said that the soul is timeless, right? I think I do believe that the soul is timeless, and then you have a link to the rest of your souls. Do you think that souls linger together? Like the bishop's nephew soul is in this person's comment soul, and then he's just following you around in your
Oh yeah. I think we all meet together and play together. We make deals like, in this life I'll be holding your arm as your friend, and the next life I will be your torturer, and it goes back and forth. I think we play with each other. We meet the same souls over and over again. I believe in spiritual. I've had a sense of spiritual families, soul families, and that's why I said, like, good to see you all again, even if you weren't here last month. Because I think we hang out with each other, and people that are important, even minor things. Like I had an experience the other day. I had this casual encounter with somebody. I bumped into this person, and they told me their life story in just a supermarket, and then gave me some very important information about how to deal with my life and with the problem I'm dealing with. And it was like, what? In a supermarket, but maybe they were part of my soul family. If you believe there are no coincidences, I think you look at the world quite differently than if you don't have that perspective. But I wouldn't suggest you tell that to people at a cocktail party.
Oh, why not?
Okay.
Because they look at you like you're a little crazy. Why not? Well, that is my story. I hid myself, Carol.
Yeah.
I hid who I am to lead a more conventional life. I was a madman. I wrote Duncan Hines Cakes commercials.
Yeah.
I got people to start smoking cigars with El Productos. I did terrible things. They're not good cigars. Even the El Producto people don't smoke those. The El Producto management smokes other people's cigars.
You had another
Trivia.
question?
Yeah, I guess my next question is, from a human cognitive perspective, we're really good at, pattern matching, right? I'm wondering, with these experiences that you've had, what was like the most unrecognizable experience that you've had? Maybe you couldn't even recognize what was happening.
It's a good
I think
question.
they all felt right. So they were all recognizable, if I heard your question correctly.
Yeah, okay.
Wow, even the slave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. When you are having the experience, it's like you don't even connect with your physical body. You're having this experience and you are fully embodying this other person. And it's like truth has an energy, and it feels so true to you. So that's why, we say, even if you think it's your imagination, if that's what you have to tell yourself that, oh, it's my imagination. But then when you think about it, how true does that feel to you? Yeah, and then there are also certain tells that we as regression therapists look for when a person is going through an experience, that the catharsis, the emotions, sometimes a person's voice will completely change. I've seen women or men who all of a sudden their face looks like the opposite sex. They give off this energy like the opposite sex, or like if they're a strong, powerful person, I've seen them curl into a fetal position because of a memory from another lifetime. So yeah, there's a knowing when you're having the experience. Question? Yeah. Got
I'd like
another.
to make a comment
Yeah, go ahead.
about, I'd be curious in the room, who has done past life exploration? Would help me
many?
know what to say next.
A little.
Yeah, we've got
One,
about half
no,
in our
Okay.
room. Uh-huh.
I think it's really important, if you do this work, not to expect you're going to have that kind of a reaction. There's a thing in hypnosis, the law of reversed effort, from Emile Coué, the 19th century hypnotist, early 20th century, rather, that the less you try, the better it works.
Mm,
And when a person comes into hypnosis for regression,
yes.
if they believe that they, I was definitely an Egyptian princess, no doubt about it, they're gonna be putting their conscious mind in the way of the experience. The way to, and if you think, oh, I'm gonna have an experience like Carol or John, you're gonna work against yourself. You need to. I have a little video I showed Carol. I could put the link in it. But if you give me your email, if Carol's okay with that, I'll send you stuff. If you put your link in the email, in the chat rather, I'll send you an email. But you need to go into it with a completely open mind. That whatever you experience, you allow yourself to experience. These stories of if I had heard stories like this my first time, I would have expected that, and it would have gotten in the way. But I had no expectations because I had never done a past life regression. So the person was able very easily to get me to go back. And I tend to do it. I think I'm better at it than a lot of people. I'm hypnotism is a normal curve. Some people are great at being hypnotized, and I'm in that category. Probably Carol is too. Some people are very resistant. Most are in the middle. So if you're, resistant, and you're thinking that what you're going to be doing is like what Carol describes, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to just be stuck in your analytical mind. Hypnosis is about bypassing the analytical mind to get to the subconscious, or in this case, what you might call the spiritual consciousness. So that would be my little.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's beautifully said. So Jean, you have another question?
Yeah, we just talked about how we all linger together, similar group each lifetime. Do you think you have a theory why? Is that, like you said, maybe you promise someone, I will be with you forever, or you really like each other so much, so you continue the relationship, or maybe you really in debt to someone, right? You come somehow find each other, you kind of have to return, or sometimes it can. I think in your book you mentioned sometimes the person is not good to you, doesn't mean you owe that person. Could be just that person is just a mad person, right? So do you have like all different things?
I think all of the things you said are reasons why people could choose to play together again. But the thing, if somebody is bad to you, one of the karma, I think, can be mistaken. If you think about karma as punishment, I was like, oh, you must have done something bad in your last life. And you just went, just got hit by a car. You must have paying for a crime. I think it's about lessons that, my life before this life, chronologically, I was Polish in World War II, and I joined the SS, and I experienced myself as a guard in an ancillary camp of Auschwitz. And there I am there. And I'll tell you one thing about that life was about dehumanizing. And I had the idea that I had the idea if you had tattoos on your arm that you were a prisoner, you were already dead. So I didn't worry about you. I was 19 years old or so when I died, and I'm a guard there. But my common theme, and this is what I have learned since I wrote the book, is about feelings of fraudulence, inadequacy, called low self-esteem. So this guy was a Polish SS guy, and the real Germans looked down on him. That he was Aryan, but not really Aryan. And so in this life, I get my father. My father, his dad had died in 1939 when Adolf Hitler was on the cover of Time magazine. My father, and our ancestry is German. My father liked Hitler. I got born into a family where my father was a wannabe Adolf. Talk about karma. Does that mean I was being punished, or I had a lesson to learn? I choose to think I had a lesson to learn. I don't think God, karma, whatever, the universe runs around punishing people. That was the tradition I was raised in. What I was told is the one true church. You get punished. You do bad, you're punished. So I constructed my life about thinking I'm bad, trying to appear good, and fraudulence came into. So I don't think I was punished with my dad. I think, and I had an incredible reconciliation with my dad on my way to the astral plane or whatever. But I went to this. I was doing a presentation at a thing where we were training regular licensed therapists in alternative stuff. And I did my pitch, and I stared up somebody else's, and she had you imagine your death, experience your death. And she pointed out that, some souls get stuck, ghosts sometimes. And anybody that's done past life work knows you can linger sometimes. Sometimes it'll be a long time, so short. So anyway, everybody else, I'm thinking is going on to the, I'm lying on the floor, everybody else has experience. I'm thinking I'm stuck. And then suddenly I begin to move, and I bump into my father, who had died the prior year. And I'm blocked by my dad. My dad wanted to be Nazi, and we have it out. We have it out there, and we reconciled. And then he and I went on together, arm in arm, toward the light. This kind of stuff, I have been in therapy. Any kind of therapy I heard about, I would do. From transactional analysis, the old S training, screen therapy, traditional talk therapy, and nothing touched this. And that is one of the things about this work. For people that are in therapy, when you're stuck and you don't get anywhere, well, maybe it wasn't something that happened in this life entirely. I think usually it is, but maybe it's not entirely. And so that's what I got out of this thing. I like my life today. I'm 74 years old. I'm in the final couple of laps around the track here, and I love my life. I'm not sure I could have said it at different points along the way with as much clarity.
Beautiful. That reminds me of, and I don't know that you addressed this in the book, but I wondered, to follow up with that question, is, did you remember a time when you and your father had a previous life together?
No. And, going back, you may call it humility. I'll just try to call it being accurate. There's a lot more work I could do, a lot more work. I've never done that kind of thing, to see where he and I connected. And truthfully, when I think about it, I think you can go into a past life experience with an agenda, like I want to get a skill, You can go into it to solve a problem, or you can just go in to see what your soul wants you to know. And I've generally tended to do it that way. Yeah. What does my soul need me to know?
Yeah.
Soul meaning the higher self or not necessary?
Okay, so, yeah,
If I define soul as consciousness,
So it's you call higher self, right?
no, I call soul my no, I call soul myself.
Okay, it's
My
not
soul-
a higher self. You
No.
Carol uses. It's not.
okay.
Yeah, I'm inside of this
let-
body, this
let me-
Caucasian elderly male body.
Yeah, let me explain a little bit. Jean is Buddhist.
Ah,
And so Buddhists don't use the word soul. They actually use a word called anatta, which means no soul, or it.
and how does that translate?
Anatta. So some people translate it as no soul, but I found another translation that I like even better in the book that I'm working on now, which means beyond being.
Yeah.
And that I connect with. So that's why I even question how people think of higher self. So I'm more aligned with that beyond being, or what Joel Witten calls meta consciousness. So if you think of, we are all streams of consciousness, every lifetime is a stream of consciousness. So that's what the Buddhists believe. Then, which is a little bit different from Hinduism, and where Hinduism are more connected with a deity creating each incarnation. In Buddhism, that's not the case. And so I'm kind of aligned with that stream of consciousness and the meta consciousness that is overseeing the whole thing. So someone had mentioned in the chat, I think it was Peter, about Seth, and in reading and studying the Seth material, he talks about an oversoul. And so even for myself personally, more than thinking of a soul, I think of an oversoul that disperses a stream of consciousness into each one of our incarnations. And but I'm still working on all of that. So
I think we use consciousness too.
consciousness, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Buddhists use conscious, and stream of consciousness is another way that they describe what Hindus would say deity incarnating, and so that's another differentiation between Hindus, or will use the word reincarnate, where Buddhists will say rebirth, reborn. And I'm going to talk about all of these things in my new book coming up, so that we have a deeper understanding of this whole process. But I love it that, you know, we're picking up on all of these different questions. This is the beautiful thing about creating this kind of sacred space where we can have these kind of conversations. And so I love it that your book is stimulating all of these. I don't want to ignore the people online. Do you all have any questions? If you do, just open up. Mary Grace.
I wanted to say, in the theosophical way of thinking, you have what's called a monad, MONAD, and that's higher than the soul. That's higher consciousness. And if you get into the monad, then you're getting into where the higher souls are. I'm not explaining this right. Not just higher souls, but the adepts, or the leaders, or the people that we would consider sort of like gods. They're at a much higher level than we are. And that's where you would connect with them in the monad, which is higher than the soul. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Yeah, Mary Grace has studied theosophy for many years.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and theosophy breaks down things in many different levels. So I cover that in the book also. and many different teachings break all of these things down. For myself, I keep it very simple. We've got a physical world, we've got a non-physical world, and then there's something beyond all of that that has created all of this. And don't ask me what that is. I haven't gotten there yet.
I'll just add one more thing in.
I call it that which creates this. That's that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mary Grace.
I just want to say one more thing. At one point in the thinking of the Theosophists, you give up the soul. When you go, they have initiations, and as you get higher and higher and more evolved, and that's what we're all here doing. We're all here evolving. It's like a spiral. You're going up and up. That you actually give up the soul, and only the monad remains. That's all I wanted to say.
Isn't that in the level of the Atman?
You could be right. There's the Bodic level and the Atman. I'm not quite sure if it's that high up. It might be a little lower down where the individual soul is no longer needed.
Yeah. Thank you. Isn't it exciting to be exposed to all of these different thoughts? And did you have a comment or question?
No, I love theosophy though. It's like a Victorian meritocracy. And I wanted to ask you, based on something you said earlier, do you think you can discern an ethical concept of right and wrong from your experiences?
He's on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, John.
I'm glad I was muted because I was just saying, oh my God, I don't know. That's a wonderful question. That's a really wonderful question.
Sorry, I'm preoccupied with that. Forgive me.
Yeah, I got no answer for that. In each life, I always do what I think is right. Always. And my ethics are often dependent on culture. When I was Ernst and the SS guy, my culture told me it was ethical to imprison people because of their religion. So I thought it was ethical. I think there's a fundamental, ultimate ethics about being kind and being loving. That this is about love, and other than love is a sign of lack of evolution, I think. But yeah, each life, good God, I've always thought whatever my culture told me was right was right.
Let's see.
Even if I didn't do it, I might make myself wrong because I wasn't like if Ernst had not imprisoned Jews, he'd have to deal with that, letting down his race.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's all cultural.
The opposite. So.
And that reminds me to ask you about a life between life experience. Have you done that? I can't remember off the top of my head.
A little. Yeah, I definitely had an experience of that, of being with the soul family. I've had experience with the soul family in the presence of a deity, which was quite amazing. And I've had the experience a little bit of figuring out what I'm going to do, where you design your next incarnation, where you sign up for it.
Can you tell us more what that looked like?
Where you choose. Oh, that is the thing about, it was an experience. I could do I could probably do a map of it. Words would fail. I had an experience of being somewhere and being with entities and figuring it out and coming to some kind of an agreement that this is what I would do. But I haven't spent as much time. I love your book club, and I'm hoping you're going to get people here who know much more than I do. I haven't spent much time with what they call the Bardo, or I've heard called the Bardo, but I'd like to hear people talk about that. What that's like. I had a student. I teach the certification class, and I always do a past life regression, just one given show them, what's possible. And she found herself before a tribunal. Her name is Kristen Johnston. She has a wonderful book out now. It's on Amazon called Heal the People. And so there she is in my certification class, and suddenly she's before the tribunal. And according to what came up, she could have said that was it. Maybe she becomes a monad at that point. I don't know what exactly would have happened, but the tribunal said, we want you to go back with a mission. And her mission, she created a center after I worked with her, as I trained her in hypnotism, quantum healing center. She wrote her book, and her mission is to bring her vision to the world. So that was a pretty dramatic case of that. I never had anything as dramatic as that.
I love collecting stories about the life between life. So for those of you who might not be familiar with that, between incarnations, we have what I call the non-physical world. There are many names for it in many cultures, but like I said, to keep it simple, I call it the non-physical world. And there's a process that people go through in the non-physical world. And so I've been collecting stories about what it's like there. And at the end of the meeting, I'll share a little bit more about an experience related to that. And any other questions anyone has here? How about online? I had a question. I'm trying to remember it. So many thoughts are racing through my head.
I have one simple question. Let me ask.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I guess, is there a best way to like lead your life or prepare for a next type of thing? Or
Good question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
is there a way you can like recommend or any words about leading your life or preparing for the next one?
Do the best you can to lead a good life. I would say that's the best advice I got. Try to be kind to people. Try to help people. There's that old phrase, God helps those who help themselves. I think God helps those who help others. That's what I got. I put Kristen Johnston's book in the chat.
Healing.
It's Heal the People.
Heal the People.
Yeah, and she got given this mandate, including the title of the book and the colors of the book.
Very nice. Thank you for
her tribunal.
Yep, I'll be sure and share that in the chats as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yep. Judy has another question.
This was a little off topic, but it was mentioned in the book. Have you changed your opinion on extraterrestrials since you wrote the book?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yes? Are you communicating with them?
Tell us more.
No, I have just over time revised. I can tell you the specific stories. Yeah, I mentioned my office is in a medical building. I've been there for years, and finally, this very respected cardiologist told me that he had been abducted, and told me the story in great depth. And someone I've known for years, is credible. I've also got a family member who's had experiences. So I am, by the way, an agnostic toward UFOs still, I suppose, but I'm much more open to it than I was when I wrote the book. I mean, if there are UFOs and they're threatening us or something, yeah, it would be important.
Well,
But like I said in the book, until they land the White House lawn, I'm not going to pay much attention.
okay. Well, I was just curious because when you had talked about Jesus not being accepted,
Yes.
he actually was not a human. He was from a different constellation. And that's why he was not accepted. So I could talk with you for a long time and it would be lovely, but it's just it was just very telling that I liked your take on him
Mm.
not being a Homo sapien,
Yeah, but the next species.
but the next species, but he really was not even human. So it was quite, because he was Mother Mary, but he, Joseph was not his father. So it's quite a story. So
Well, we could spend weeks on that topic right
yes,
there.
we could, but it was just interesting where he,
Yeah.
I will not go any farther, but I was just kind of curious.
But it does remind me of that thing the guy wrote in the reincarnation thing. I don't care what anyone says, I ain't coming back here. It's a tough planet.
Yes, it is.
You incarnate here, and your mission is what? People should love
Yes, yes,
each other, and they crucify you. That happens here a lot.
yes.
A lot. There may be better planets somewhere. It's tough here.
Yes.
It's tough here, and someone like someone who wants to do something beautiful and positive sometimes can find themselves being burnt at the stake as a witch, or crucified.
I saw that comment also. This was on one of our mutual reincarnation Facebook groups. I saw that comment also, and I wanted to reply to him.
Oh, you did?
I did. I saw it, and I wanted to reply to him, but when I checked on a soul level, I said, no, he's not even going to get this.
No.
But coming back to the life between life thing, my experience has been that in the life between life, and they say you're brought before the elders or council, or some people call them judges, but not judges in the same way we think of judges on the earth plane. But one of the things that I have experienced and others have experienced in that level is that, first of all, there's no judgment. And over the message is, you are really doing the best that you can in any given moment. But if you haven't done, now that you're in this place, if you do the life review and you say, oh, I really could have done better, then you just learn from that and you go on. But there's such unconditional love and compassion. So there's not that same right or wrongness thing, duality, from a soul perspective or the life between life perspective. And I wanted to say that to that gentleman. And then the other aspect that I've learned in the life between life experiences, the unconditional love, that we created this earth world, this earth experience to love, to experience love. And one of those things is to love this life that we're living on this earth. And so my comment would have been to him, until you can learn to love the earth, you're probably going to come back. But I didn't think you would get that, so I didn't. So here's a question I'd love to throw at you, John, because I know I've experienced this. I think a few other people that I know who remember lives is that, so you wrote the stories, but have you had more memories from those different characters that have shown you even more about their lives since you wrote them?
The short answer is I don't think so, but I've been able to draw on my memories and my sense of their essences at certain times when I'm needed. Keep in mind, most of my lives have been problematical, so it's kind of hard to draw on my slave boy in Georgia's experience, which was just pain. The shaman I can draw on sometimes, but I haven't got anything more. I do want to say something about that guy with the quote, and my idea that life is hard. as I said earlier, I believe everything in incarnation is effortful. It is effortful to be in a body. Everything is effort. You got to hold your head up, for God's sake. You know, you got to feed it. You got to exercise it. You got to clean it. There's so much stuff about it. Everything is like burdensome. And I was thinking about today, one of the issues I have, one theme is fraudulence and pretense. Another is addiction. You know, if you read the book, you'll know I've been in recovery from alcohol for many, many years. And I had experiences. I went to the root of how I got to be alcoholic. It had to do with pain, some situations as a hunter, and then a murderer. Anyway, so I had this tendency not to want pain, to want to get out of pain. I think the other part of it is I want everything instantly. Addicts generally, we want what we want when we want it. We don't want to wait. And you know, a pill or a drink or placing a wager will give us a kick out of reality. And I think one of my things in this life dealing with addiction is I think in order to progress, it's necessary for me to accept incarnation. I need to get used to being in a body before I can go on. And you know, even though I wrote the book and everything, and you know, I'm just honored and delighted to be the focus here. I am not that advanced. I'm in process. I'm learning, and I think that one of my big lessons is to be comfortable being in a body. Simple as that. Before I can go on.
Oh, you and me both. Yeah. That's a beautiful lesson.
I thought you would be very comfortable having a body. No?
No, actually, no. Although I have a different attitude towards extraterrestrials, for the longest time, I felt like I was on the wrong planet. And it wasn't until I had this memory about being on another planet that I then became comfortable being in this body. So, and like your instance of remembering the being the beetle, I haven't had that, but my sister had a memory of being a whale. We were doing a regression where she was she knew she had this fear of water, and so we were, you know, going into the regression looking at that, and she had this experience of being a whale, not afraid of the water at all. In fact, we even took the whale to its death, and it was like, you know, it was like they sleep like this, and so anytime I find a picture of a whale that's in vertical position, I send it to her. It's like she's right back there into the memory of it. But I did have a memory, not of an animal, but of a reptilian, being a reptilian. So I was looking through these eyes of this reptilian person, and I'll never forget the texture of the skin, the color of the skin, and in his consciousness. I don't have enough memory about that one to really speak much about it, but I remember being what do you call it? A scout, and that we were there was a group of us, we each had shuttles, and we were coming to the planet to see if it was habitable yet. So, you know, just like we're getting ready to send a team out to Mars, that this team from wherever it was from, the reptilian groups, were coming here to see if Earth was habitable. And so when people talk about reptilians in a really negative way, it really bothers me. And because David Icke has this whole thing about reptilians, and it's just like fingernails on the chalkboard when I hear him talking about that. Just another fluky experience in this world.
You know, think about ethics, the question Peter had. If you're incarnated as a reptile on another planet, you would have whatever ethics they have. I would imagine as a reptile, a whole different ethical system. I think different way of looking at the world entirely. And who knows how many multiple trillions of possibilities are out there.
Well, and that's a really good point, because what I discovered in remembering that past life was that the personalities of those reptilian people were not unlike the personalities of people on Earth. And the way that that unfolded for me was my particular character's shuttle had been sabotaged by one of his colleagues, so that when he hit the Earth plane, rather than just hovering over it and landing properly, he hit and he died. And it was like looking through his reptilian eyes at the person from the other shuttle and getting this knowing that, oh no, that person was responsible for the sabotage to my shuttle. So it showed me that, ooh, you know, we have a tendency to just assume people from other planets must be more highly evolved than we are. But they were showing me that they had personalities, they had foibles and flaws just like we do. So I'll share this one other little thing about extraterrestrials. That experience opened me up a little bit. And then, are you familiar with John Mack? So he was a psychologist from Harvard, and he started talking to people who had abduction experiences. So he went from being totally skeptical to someone who like, okay, something is happening here. And he put his whole reputation on the line. He did not lose his standing in the Harvard community. They did a review thing, but he didn't lose his standing. So I was reading his stuff. And then I had this experience where an extraterrestrial, I was meditating and an extraterrestrial popped in my living room. And I thought, oh crap, what's this about? And because of that memory of the reptilian, I said to him, do you people know what you're doing? This is not good karma. And boy, that must have shaken him up a little bit, because all of a sudden, poof, he was gone and he didn't show up for a month. And then I had this weird thing that it was a little critter on the wall of my apartment at that time. And I put it in a jar because I'd never seen anything like this. And so a month later, this character pops back again. And he says to me, what were you doing with that thing in the jar? That's what we were doing with people we were abducting. So the jury's still out for me. I'm still processing all of that, but I can't deny that I had those experiences. So more than I meant to share, but this is beautiful that we're opening up, we're questioning race, gender, ethnicity, culture, spiritual teachings, and even extraterrestrials, right? So I wanted John to share one of the poems. You ready for that? I'll give you one.
I am ready for that. That would be a pleasure to me.
Yeah. I asked him if he would share one of his poems, because as those of you who heard the audiobook, his voice is just hypnotizing. And so I asked him, which of the poems would you like to share? And he knew exactly which one. And I agree, this will be just a beautiful way to sum it all up. So whenever you're ready.
Good. Well, I called, my book is called My Autobiographies, and it's very self-serving, but if anybody feels like giving me a review, I would appreciate that. But it's My Autobiographies. This poem is called Our Autobiographies, yours and mine. And it goes, if all the world is a stage and you and I the cast, who watches the show? God, our higher selves, our souls? Or are these dramas simply stored on forgotten shelves, forever unread, forever unseen, perhaps later by ourselves, on this old age finds us musing, yes, this was me. I lived an amazing dream, now coming to an end. Is that all there is? Tales told by myself, to myself, for no one, nothing, empty and meaningless, like a play performed in a theater where all the seats are empty. Did it happen at all? Not even a dream, just a nothing for no one. Or do you and I play a role in this great epic with a divine audience, in rapt attention to every twist and turn of our plots, a series of never-ending beginnings, each a step closer to transcendence, the divine, something at stake, of far more significance than any life's successes, failure, sadness, grief, or joy. So I choose to believe and invite you, dear reader, to join me. Join me in this magical quest to be not your mind or your body, but a soul witnessing divinity unfolding, infinite growing, becoming one with whatever creates this universe, the cosmic observer, universal creator, master storyteller, that which creates this, before the beginning, past the end, always present, waiting to be found and then refound over and over, joyously, rediscovering and rediscovered within. That's my pitch.
Thank you so much for that. That was really beautiful.